I'm taking just a brief moment to tell you about Anchor, which is the platform that I am using to record my podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. And who doesn't want free? There are also certain tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your iPhone or computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So please just download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started and have fun doing it. Hi everyone, this is Christy from Life Struggles. I'm going to give you just a little bit of background on my interview today with Kim Green. Oh my goodness, sit back, listen, don't have a drink or smoke some pot, and enjoy, maybe even shed a few tears on Kim's story. A little bit of background is that Kim was 3 years old on a boat with her dad when she had her first beer given to her by her dad. And she liked to taste. Can you imagine that? And then her first drunk, she was 11 years old. By the time she was 15, she was actively drinking, smoking pot, and cocaine, and meth, and all the things. Listen carefully and learn about an addictive personality and her amazing recovery story. Here's Kim. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I try to get my earbuds to work on here, but they don't for some reason.
Oh, well, that's okay. Let's just go
Yeah.
ahead and get started. So, I think we will just go ahead with you starting your story. I did
Okay.
do an introduction. So, hello, everybody. This is Kim, and Kim has quite a story to tell us. Some of you might even get teary eyed, but there's a really good ending. Okay, Kim, take it from here.
Thanks so much, Christy. Hi, my name is Kim. I currently live in Portland, Oregon. And as of today, I have a little over 7.5 years clean from any drugs or any alcohol. Now, about 8 years ago, I never could have said that. So, my story starts it just as any other person would, really. I was born into a family, middle class, working family. My parents are still married to this day. I have two older brothers, and I'm the youngest of three kids. I am also a type 1 diabetic. So that means that I am insulin dependent. So I really do think that that has a lot to do with some of my addiction and alcohol issues. So I was born, and I say this, that I came out, and I just feel like I was born with that alcoholism gene in me. And the reason why I say that is because I would get an idea in my head, and it was like an obsession. And here's, for example, I always wanted a hamster. And I would ask my mom over and over and over and over for a hamster, like every single day. And, I would drive her nuts. And it's like it was that obsession that I couldn't do anything. My life would be better if I had a hamster, right? So I would always drive my mom nuts over these things that I wanted. And I mean, it even went as far as into my relationships. You know, when I was a little girl, I could only have one friend at a time. And we were like best of friends. And if that friend ever wanted to have other friends, it broke my heart. So I didn't
Aw.
what I yeah, I didn't quite like, it just something was a little bit off. Now, um, my two older brothers were much older. One's 7 years older and one's 10 years older. So I kind of was like an only child sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up was good. I can't really say that, I'm a victim of abuse or anything like that, but started I think, yeah, we talked about this. The first time I ever had a drink, well, that I can remember, I do remember being on a houseboat with my parents. We always went on a houseboat in California during our summer times. And I remember eating chips and drinking beer with my dad. So I would take sips of beer and something about like the saltiness of the chips and washing it down with beer and the bubbles. It was so good, and I wasn't, a 3-year-old chugging beer or anything, but I can just remember the taste of it. It was good. Um,
So, what we want to do is really quickly clarify what Kim's, I believe, trying to explain is that she just was born with an addiction, period.
correct.
And to clarify that addiction is addiction, it can be of anything. It can be of alcohol, it can be of drugs, it can be an obsession with cleaning, it can be OCD with anything, all of that. So this is what we're talking about today. So Kim does have a lot of different stuff to add to this. Okay, take it back.
Yeah. Um, so the first time I can ever remember physically being drunk, it was a Christmas party that my parents had, and my brothers were there. Now, mind you, they were much older. And I saw a blue bottle, and it was a blue bottle with some sort of liquor in it, but it had like blue crystals. And I just thought it was magical. It had cool writing on it. It looked so cool to me. So, I remember it being in a scotch glass. My brother poured it and he thought I would just take a sip. Well, I drank the whole entire thing. Now,
Oh
mind
my
you,
gosh.
it was probably more than half of a scotch glass. So I don't really remember, obviously my parents were doing their thing, entertaining guests. And I remember walking down the stairs. I had one hand on a railing and then one hand on a wall. And I just remember feeling so dizzy and woozy. And then I went to bed. I probably slept great, but that's what I
But do
remember.
you remember how you felt?
Um, I don't. I just remember the wooziness and the dizzy and just kind of like, whoa,
Oh,
whoa. I don't even know if I put two and two together that that's what was happening and that's what I was feeling. Like I drank this alcohol and now here I am drunk.
so
It was,
how much do you think you weighed then?
oh gosh. I mean, I was probably 12 or 13. So maybe 70, 80 pounds, maybe.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. And you had how much?
Um,
Just
gosh,
a shot?
no, it was in a Scotch glass. So
Oh, okay. Wow.
yeah, I probably drank half of it, if not all of it. You know, there was
Wow.
a lot. There was a lot. I don't remember throwing up or anything like that, but that's what I
Um,
do remember. Um,
but so if you don't remember and nobody said anything, you probably didn't. Right.
right.
Okay. Okay. This is
So
kind of interesting that at that much at that age and unless you were already building a tolerance.
no, I mean, I wasn't drinking like all the time at that point, but as I got older and middle school and the beginning stages of high school, I do remember hanging out with this group of girls that we were like, okay, let's sneak some alcohol from our parents' cabinets. And I remember getting an empty water bottle and pouring, God, I don't even know if I mixed them at that point, but pouring liquor into it and then marking the bottle with a crayon. And that's where I knew to fill it up with water. So, whether it was tequila or whatever it was, I would put water into it to make sure that the levels were the same.
That's just like so amazing to me because I would think somebody would like notice that crayon mark or when they
I,
tasted the alcohol that it would be like not as strong as it should be or
right.
but
You would
I
think
guess they
so. And
didn't.
and they,
Okay, so we pause for a brief time
yeah.
and Kim is back. So let's continue.
Okay. Now, what part did I leave off? Because I don't know where it cut out at.
That they whatever they didn't notice the line that you drew or that it was mixed with water or anything.
Okay. Yeah. So, and being in high school, we experimented with marijuana and enter in the harder drugs, which comes, the ecstasy, the MDMA. There was some mushrooms and some LSD. And when I tried cocaine for the first time, it was like light bulbs went off in my brain and in my body. Now, I really think that has to do a lot with me being a type 1 diabetic and my autoimmune issues because I always was dealing with high blood sugars and low blood sugars. And it really took a toll on my body and on my energy levels. So when I tried an upper, it was like, yes, this is how life is supposed to be. This is how I'm supposed to feel. And, I was sneaking out of my parents' house a lot. I was doing drugs. And they really, I think they knew at that time that I was smoking pot, but that wasn't really, it was like, okay, it's a teenage thing. It's a phase.
Why do you
And
think they knew? I mean,
do I think,
why do you think that they knew? Did you have conversations or was it something they just set aside or thinking that, a phase you were going through and you'd get through?
yeah, I mean, I think that's what most parents think with their kids when they do something dramatically different, such as like, they're playing sports one day and then another day they are dressed in all black and wearing eyeliner. They're like, okay, this is just a phase. But I do remember, my parents finding the marijuana sometimes. I mean, obviously it's a stinky substance, so they could smell it. And that's when the lying really came into place. As you smoke pot, your eyes get red, kind of droopy. So we carried around Visine in our purses. We'd wash our hands so they didn't stink and probably came out smelling like a whore from a French brothel because we'd spray so much perfume on us to try and mask the smell. But it was all to try and cover up what was going on. Didn't want anyone to know or think anything different while I was having an amazing party in my head.
Right. And so if there's any parents out there listening to this that have children, some of the signs you want to look for.
Yeah.
Because we're ignorant to that. We don't think, well, our child's not going to do that. Like you explained, you came from a normal, happy family, if their quote is something known as normal now, but a middle class family. They're happily married, still married.
Yep.
So there wasn't any issues like that. Nobody was abusive to you, correct?
Nope.
So we're actually correlating this with your diabetes. Is that true?
I think that is definitely a part in it,
Okay.
And how that goes into even harder drugs. So yeah, there was a lot. There's so many pieces of the puzzle that looking back on it now, when I look back at my life, I'm like, oh yeah, that is total alcoholic or addictive behavior.
Okay. And the other thing I just wanted you to briefly let parents know, like how you got away with not going to school and or skipping school, I should say, to hang out
Mm,
with your friends.
yeah. So, um, at that time, I don't really think that they had phone calls that they made. Now this was in like the late 80s, early 2000s. So I might have answered the phone before my parents did, because they were at work, but I would write my own letters. I'd write it in my mom's hand signature saying, "Oh, Kim had an appointment on this day. Please excuse her," things like that. So,
And
yeah.
they just never questioned it,
The school,
apparently.
the
Yeah,
school or
yeah,
my
both.
parents. Yeah. I mean, there wasn't a lot of questioning going on that I remember, obviously looking back now, it's like there's trauma in the story involved, but it's funny with our brains because we remember things in glimpses. I don't remember all of my growing up in my childhood and things like that because it might have been things that I went through at that time. Was there a sexual abuse later on in my life? Absolutely. But our brain has one primary purpose, and that is to keep us safe.
Right.
So when it's a memory or things like that, or oh, this is an unsafe place, it kind of shuts down. So, still to this day, I'm learning more and more about myself. But yeah, um,
Okay.
as far as the lies, there was a lot of lies, always lying, and I barely graduated high school. My parents, at the very end, my senior year, they did know that I was barely going to graduate. And that's when they knew. They were like, okay, something's going on. And I was skipping school, definitely skipping school. And what excuses I told them, I'm not sure. But
Well,
yeah,
and I guess not to, this is not a judgment being put on it, but I, from what I've done in research and stuff, with the amount of drugs and the amount of years with the drugs and the alcohol and all that, that's going to cloud your memory too. Besides the
absolutely.
fact that it was years ago. So,
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, the effect that it has on the brain, especially, the constant drinking, and if you get into harder drugs, it changes the brain.
right,
You do certain drugs and it causes holes and dark spots when you look at it through an MRI or a CAT scan or anything like that. It
right.
definitely changes the brain, as you know.
Yep, yep. Okay, so you got caught. Mom and dad finally figured out that you something was
Yeah.
going on. And
Yeah.
so what happened then?
Um, I don't really, I don't think I was punished or anything, but it was like, hey, if you don't go to school, you're not going to go to college. And I didn't care. I didn't want to go to college. I had no dreams or aspirations of what I wanted to do when I grew up. Like, honestly, honest to goodness, I was like, hey, I'm going to be an alcoholic. That's what I'm going to be. Not like the type that is brown bagging it under a bridge or anything, but I loved to party. I loved the way it made me feel. I loved the nightlife. And that's what brought me into, the next segment of my life, per se.
Okay, so let's go on to that. So
Yeah.
where first of all, did you work in high school?
I had little odds and end jobs. I remember working at a little card store, like a Hallmark store almost. I
Okay,
remember that and
well,
working
because
at
it
a.
takes money to get this stuff.
It
So
does.
so
It
where were you
does.
getting your money?
Um, we started selling marijuana, and we get it from much older guys, and taking out our share and selling the rest, increasing in price or whatever it was.
Wow, and there was never any arrests or you never got caught and you
No,
just got away with
no,
it.
yeah,
Okay.
there was. there was no arrest, definitely.
So what
Um,
was because as we know today, you've been sober for, what
mhm,
we say, 7 years?
7.5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So what started that? How did that come about? Or is there some stuff in between that's important for us to know?
Oh, there's a whole bunch of stuff in between.
Okay.
So
Okay. Well, tell us some stuff in between.
yeah. So as I mentioned, living in Reno in a 24-hour town, I was introduced to, I met a exotic dancer. I started going to a community college because I was like, okay, I have to do that. And this girl, she had a nice car, nice clothes, nice bags. And I was like, what does she do?
There you
And she told
go.
me, she said, I am a stripper, an exotic dancer, if you will. And I was like, okay, and meanwhile, like I loved the club scene. Again, I had a fake ID, so I was going in there all the time. I started working there by checking in coats. And so I loved it. I loved the lights. I loved the music, being out at night. It was just so exciting. So I was about
And
18 when I started my dancing
oh,
escapade.
wow. And so did mom and dad know about that? I mean, you probably weren't even living at home, were you?
No, I mean they did find out. I know that, but they didn't know for a while.
But were you not living at home?
I don't think I was at that point because I
Okay.
was out all the time, staying with friends or boyfriends. So,
Okay.
um, yeah, I started dancing, and it was always, people were buying girls drinks, and incomes the more drugs and things like that. And I had a good friend at the time, and we used to party. And one time I called her and I was like, hey, where are you? And she never answered. And then the next day she called and she was like, hey, I was out last night. I was doing something. And I was like, what were you doing? And she's like, well, I was doing meth. And at that point, like I had no idea
Wow.
what it was, but I wanted to know. I mean, there wasn't a drug or anything like that I was like, I'm not going to do that,
And so
because
you were
I
never afraid of trying anything.
no, no, absolutely not. It was like exciting, to try something. So the first time I tried crystal meth, that was it. I was hooked from the very first moment.
So how's that make you feel?
How does it make, oh, the drug itself?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. It's like cocaine times 1,000. It's an upper. It fires off the dopamine and the serotonin in our brains, and it felt good. I could get things done. I felt like I was quicker, faster, but really it was just the speed. And it
But
it was, yeah,
but did you okay, so it probably helped you with your self-esteem. If you I don't know what your self-esteem
absolutely,
was, but
absolutely.
that's what I've understood about it. If there was sadness in your life, it took that away. Is what
Yeah.
this is all stuff I've heard from other people, like what it's done for them.
Hmm.
But what I want to know is, did you did you have the feeling of I want more, I need more, or did you use
Oh
it
yeah.
as a crutch for when you weren't feeling on top of the world?
Oh no, I wanted it all day, every day.
Okay.
The first time that I tried it, I stayed up for 13 days straight. So that
Wow.
was 13 days, no sleeping. I had to drink liquid, obviously, to stay alive. So there was probably, drinking water and alcohol, and smoking marijuana in between, and lots of cigarettes. But
Wow. Lots of damage to yourself.
yeah, yeah.
And here you are. So okay, continue. This
Um,
is
and
interesting.
and so being up for 13 days, the hallucinations kick in. You have audio hallucinations, visual hallucinations. The paranoia it's scary.
I
It's
was going to
definitely,
say, isn't that part scary?
it is. It was very scary.
Okay.
And the first time, obviously the first bender that I went on, it was like, okay. So around day third, towards the end, I
Towards the
was
end
like,
of what?
towards the end of my 13 days being up straight,
Okay.
that is where I was like, oh, hey, I'm a diabetic. I'm going to, check my blood sugar, do that kind of stuff. So I gave myself some insulin thinking that I needed it. Well, mind you,
without checking?
my brain was very, I checked my blood sugar, and I hadn't done anything. I hadn't been eating, nothing. So the point of insulin is to, when we put food in our body, our blood sugars naturally rise. Well, our pancreas produces insulin, and that brings down our blood sugars. Well, since my pancreas doesn't work, I give myself insulin. So, again, there was definitely drug induced craziness, and I gave myself insulin, and it brought my blood sugars down so low that I passed out. So I remember someone pouring like ice cold water on my head, and I was on the ground, and I was like, and that's when I woke up, and they drove me to the hospital, and they left me there. So mind you, everyone that I was with at that time was doing drugs and probably pretty paranoid.
Well,
So,
sure. So they didn't want anybody to know.
oh no, they didn't want anybody to know anything. So I go to the hospital, and I remember them cutting off my clothes. Like, I had new clothes. Excuse me.
They cut them off?
They did. They cut them off because they couldn't get them off of me. Like, I was incoherent. So they cut them.
Interesting. But you remember that?
I do.
Or do you
I
just
do.
remember you woke up and they were cut off?
No, I do remember them cutting them. To check my heart and to put in IVs and things like that. They got to have clear
But yet
access
you
without.
couldn't, even though you knew what they were doing, your body couldn't respond to help them.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I was just so out of it. So
Okay.
they got my blood sugar back in range, and I was coming out of it. Well, I called my friends, and my quote unquote friends, right, who just dropped me
Right.
off at the hospital to leave me there. And they came back and got me, and I was smoking again. Like, on the way home, I lit up again, and I was getting loaded. So, smoking meth again.
Okay.
Like, I went to the hospital.
On you?
Nope, they had it.
Oh, so you hooked up with them immediately and got some more?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
I did.
Okay.
Now, I was getting money, obviously, through dancing, and that's how the money was coming in at this time. So, fast forward and things like that, it got worse and worse. Obviously, my parents knew, and I would go to their house to try and clean up and sober up. And they're like, yeah, this isn't working out. We're not going to have you here doing this. And it spiraled very, very quickly. I remember around Christmas time, family was going to be around. I was living in a motel off of 4th Street in Reno. Now, 4th Street is not a good place. Let's just say that.
And probably a lot of drugs and stuff or is that what you're talking about? Or just, okay.
It was nonstop. I mean, I would use and keep using until my body like physically gave out. And I was like, okay, I'd pass out for like 2 days, 3 days, and I would sleep that entire time because my body was just like giving out, it needed sleep. So while I was in that hotel, I was definitely dancing, but with meth use and the paranoia, that the commercials that you see on TV are true. I used to pick at my skin a lot. Now, I would be covered from head to toe in sores. So no one wants to see a stripper like that. Let's just so it was like this, I would be loaded and try to heal my skin and myself. And so I get clean. And as soon as I went back to the strip club, I would start all over again. And it was this vicious cycle of just nonstop.
So physically, like, were you dropping weight?
Oh, I was skinny. Normally, I'm 5'9" and 170 pounds. So
Okay.
I looked like a skeleton, like a walking skeleton. My skin was literally hanging off my bones.
And
My hair was falling out.
so, and the strip club didn't care about that. They just let you come back
Oh, they
whenever.
did. There was a couple times and they're like, yeah, you need to go home, and I would try to hide it to my best of my ability by covering it with makeup or things like that. But towards the end, I knew that I couldn't do that anymore. Where I'd get clean long enough to where my skin was okay and I would make enough money and then go and do it again for another 2 weeks. So, yeah.
I can't
And
imagine all this damage done to your body. So how did you end up not doing this anymore?
yeah, so
There must have been
that is
some kind
where
of point you came to.
that is where I went to rehab. I went to several rehabs, but I went to one in Eugene, Oregon, and I met a guy there doing all the things you're not supposed to do. And I met a guy there, and
Yeah,
he,
because you're not supposed to.
oh no,
What do I want to say? You're not supposed to form a relationship with anybody that's in treatment, right?
no,
Right.
definitely not.
Okay, go
So,
ahead.
we were hanging out and doing all the things, and I was in a 90-day program at that time, like intensive treatment. I stayed there for
And
90 days. And so he was only doing like a 21-day program, and he lived in Portland. And so he got out and would come and see me. And then by the time that I finally was able to be released and done, that is when we started really dating. And both of us were clean. That was great. But he was looking at some time in prison. So he had the same drug of choice. And he got convicted of a crime, and he did 6 years in prison.
wow.
So
Okay.
him and I were together before he was convicted. And when he was taken away, that's when I was left in Oregon. And I continued and I did the same thing. I went back to Nevada and did the same thing. So in 2011 is when he was released from prison. And I came back up to Oregon to be with him. And I mean, I loved him. Like from the get-go, there was like fireworks. He
So
was my
did you
person.
have communication with him during those 6 years? I mean, that's a long time.
It is a long time. So he would call and I wouldn't answer the phone. He would write letters and I wouldn't read them because it hurt. It hurt so bad. I didn't know how to deal with it. So my way of dealing at the time was just pretend like it wasn't there. I missed him, and I felt so bad because I was out again, getting loaded, getting high, and he was clean. So he was in prison, and it's like, that inferiority where I was like, he doesn't need this, and I'm just out there getting high again. So I came back here to Oregon in 2011, and that is when I started trying to get clean. And I knew that I had to be with him. So it was about 3 years off and on where I get high and then I'd stop and then I'd get high. And the last time in 2014, my sobriety date is February 8th, 2014. He came home. At that time, we lived together. He came home and he found the drugs in the house. And he said, look, I cannot have this in the house. And I'm like, those aren't mine, da, da, da. And we were the only two that lived in our place together. So, of course, obviously they were mine. And he's like, look, I'm not going back to prison because of this. Because if he had a parole officer come and check the house and find drugs, he would immediately go back to prison. So
right.
At that point, I remember standing in the kitchen at the time and I just collapsed in his arms and I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I was so tired, felt so sick, malnourished, tired of a lot of the the chaos was inside of my brain, again, with the drugs and the hallucinations and the paranoia. It was scary. It was scary. So I enrolled myself in outpatient treatment, and I started going to school to be a medical assistant. And that is where things really took off. I did amazing in school. I got straight A's. I started working for the school. And then I got a job at a foot and ankle surgeon, and I found out I was pregnant.
Wow.
That's where my son. So I was about a year sober, and, I had some women in my life tell me that you shouldn't have this baby. You don't have enough time clean and sober. And that like fueled a fire in me. I was like, there's no way that I'm not going to have a baby. So to this day, I have two children. I have a 6-year-old and I have a 3-year-old. They've never seen me or their dad. Hi. And things just continue to get better. I mean, it's not all rainbows and sunshine, but I do work a program of recovery. I work with other women, and I am really an advocate for people getting clean, whether it's, alcohol or drugs. And I believe that there is such power in recovering loudly, because if we don't, then we die silently. So,
Okay, I'm going to repeat that quote for you guys. So we recover loudly or we die silently. I
yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
So where would somebody go when they're ready? Because we both know that in order for this to work, you have to be ready.
Oh, that's such a good question. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, they do have to be ready. I mean, any sort of outpatient treatment or inpatient, I mean, my preference is obviously inpatient because it's safe. It's a safe place. There's no, outside influences. There's no drugs or alcohol allowed there. And it's people who really know how to work with addiction issues. And they focus in on the why we are drinking the way that we are, or why we are getting high the way that they are. Like, what is it that we are trying to run from? So it's a lot of self-work. So definitely inpatient or outpatient. I mean, if that's not something that's available for someone, there's detox centers all over the place. I know here in Oregon, one of them is Hooper Detox. And you go in there at the beginning of the morning, like you wait in line outside, and they give you a little mat and a blanket, and you go in a room and you sit there and you shake it out. They give you food, and their job is to get you into a program, like a treatment facility or something like that.
So when you go for help like that, from what I understand, you can't just go cold turkey off of some drugs and depending on how much alcohol you've been consuming or whatever it is. So do these places like help you medically?
Yeah, some of them do, definitely. So if you've been drinking for, let's say, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and your body is so used to that, it is definitely advised to medically detox, because if a hardcore alcoholic stops drinking, they could die. And it's kind of like counterintuitive, but
And couldn't that be that the same with cocaine or meth, or if you were doing that like constantly, wouldn't you have to have some type of help?
It's not that way with like the uppers per se,
No?
but if you get into opiates, or benzodiazepines or heroin or things like that, that is where you definitely need like a medical detox. They wean you off of it slowly. In come the Suboxone and the methadone, and those are all drugs used to help people get off of hard opiates such as heroin.
Okay.
But as far as like cocaine and meth and things like that, you don't need it.
But that also both of those drugs are ones that like try to pull you in when
All
you're
of them
not
do.
doing them. So if somebody's going to try to do that by themselves,
Hmm.
do you have any suggestions on what would help them to not give in to that feeling of I need this? Or
Yeah, that's another good question. Wow, Christy, you came prepared.
of
Um,
course.
yes, it's really tough because when drugs are so prevalent in our homes and in our lifestyle, that's what we're used to. So, obviously the people that we are around at that time are all using or getting loaded. So it's really having to change everything about your life, the people you hang out with, the people that you talk to, the places you go, the things you do. Everything has to change. It's a saying that if you hang out in a barber shop long enough, you're going to get your hair cut. So,
Right.
so mind you, like if you are trying to stop drinking and you go to a bar to play pool for some odd reason, most likely you're going to have a drink because everyone else is, and you're in that same environment again.
And then I would like to add something just to everyone. Um, not obviously, not everybody is an alcoholic or comes from an addicted hereditary background. Um, but I was, and I just want to say this: I didn't even want to try anything because I was so terrified of the addiction. I
Mm,
had seen the damage done and stuff. But what I want to say is that I still, like in college, went to the bars on college night, and stuff. And I just chose not to drink, and I could have just as much fun as everybody else. But what I want to say is, I always got pressured, even though I would just say, I'm good, thanks anyway. When other people are drinking and having fun, they want you to do that. They want you to drink with
yeah,
them. And
absolutely.
no matter how much I would say, really, really, I'm fine. And I did have a good time until somebody was so drunk that it just wasn't fun to be around them, depending, on what kind of drunk they were. Some of them that are just happy drunks, it was fun. But not ones that get angry or belligerent, and all that. And then you just walk away from it. But what I want to say to people is if somebody says no, thank you, let it go.
Yep, absolutely.
It's, you really need to let it go. And I don't know, maybe they don't think about that when they're drinking or something, but I was so pressured. And that made me end up not wanting to go out anymore. So please, you
Yeah.
guys, if you're out drinking and having a good time and stuff, and you've got a friend that just isn't into that, don't pressure them.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So, um, my message of hope is that anyone, anywhere can get clean and can get sober. I, I'd done my fair share of things that I believed that I didn't deserve it. But I got in touch with people who had something that I wanted to. I would see women laughing. I would see them happy. Their skin was glowing. They looked, their hair was beautiful, and they were smart. And I was like, I want that. And so that's who I surrounded myself with, and a lot of times these women taught me to love myself, and they loved me when I didn't know how to love. At the beginning, they would give me hugs and I would pull away, because I didn't want to be touched. But they loved me and they showed me how to live life and a function without drugs and alcohol. So it can be done. I mean, it takes a lot of work, but it's nothing like it was, having to remember the lies, having to be afraid of people. Who did I owe money to? Who was going to come rob me? Who was going to come beat me up? Nothing is like that today. My people now, I can truly call friends. They will be here in a heartbeat. if I
That's
needed them.
great. But are these friends that you met during recovery?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, I have people that I know, from my past. I mean, if they are um out there using and stuff, a lot of it is through social media too. Again, I stay at home with my kids and I work from home, so I don't go in those situations anymore. And now I look at it as like I can be that beacon of hope. I can show people that it can be done, because a lot of people from my past know what a junkie that I was.
Hmm.
So my hope is that if you have someone in your life or you are that person, don't give up. Don't give up. One day,
And it is
wake
one
up.
day at a time.
It
So,
it really is, because if we start thinking about, oh, I'll never be able to drink again, you know, I used to be like, well, what if I get married? I'll never be able to drink on my wedding. Let's just say this: if I was going to drink on my wedding, I would be passed out, my legs would be up in there, and I'd probably sleep with a groomsman. I mean, that's the type of alcoholic that I am.
right?
So, you know, um, my heart really goes out to the children of alcoholics and addicts, because they have no choice. They watch the parents suffer, and they are stuck in it. They don't have a choice. So
So I've
get
got another interesting question since you said that. Uh, how old are your children?
6 and 3.
Okay. Have you seen in them any type of effect of addiction?
Mm. Um, with my son, I see a lot of similarities. He is
Hmm.
a super intense little kid, and um, he gets in people's faces a lot and doesn't quite know that personal space. But also at the same time, if someone says that they don't want to play with him, his heart
Hmm.
is broken. Or if he gets iPad time, um, he will like want to buy new lives or whatever it is that kids do on iPads. And he
Hmm.
just talks about it over and over and over. And so those are the similarities that I'm like, okay, this used to happen to me when I was a kid, but
So
with
do you dismiss them, or do you have some kind of plan that you're using to help him?
we talk about it. We talk about a lot of, when we do this, this happens, or when we say this, these are the consequences. It's kind of hard with kids that are so young, but at the same time, me and their dad now has 16 years of sobriety. So
Oh, wow.
he is an incredible man. And it's just, I am so blessed today to have my family. But our goal is to really share with our children what could happen. Our kids have been around, they know, they've seen us in meetings and things like that. They know, and they hear us talk on the phone. My son came up to me the other day. He's like, Mom, you can't drink alcohol, can you? And I said, no, I can't. And so he knows.
And does he ask why?
He asks, and I say, because mommy is it. I say that I'm allergic to it,
Okay.
so it makes me sick. And so when he gets older, we'll tell him why.
So what age do you think is appropriate that they can actually understand?
As soon as they start putting two and two together of like, what alcohol is, or what it can do, or
Because
because
I'm
he doesn't
thinking,
quite understand right now at six
right,
years old.
I'm thinking back, junior high would be a very, I think, a tough, I mean, kids are starting to go through their change,
You're right.
and so on and so forth. And that to me would be a really big time to watch your kids and see what's
Hmm.
going on. And I think at that age, they also would be able to understand.
Yeah.
Not
I
that they're
mean,
going to
I would,
listen.
yeah, exactly. I would even say start younger, start younger than
Then
those,
12.
maybe like 10, 9, 10, and start just
Okay.
having conversations with them. Like the other day, my son, he was like, he heard us talking, and he said, Daddy was in prison. And we said, yeah, he made some bad decisions that hurt other people and that hurt himself.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the consequences of those decisions. So we do it in little amounts, but being as open as possible, especially if there is history of addiction in any sort of family, genes, or anything like that, I think it's never too early to start talking about it.
Right. And so, like your kids, they have it from both mom and dad.
They do. Yeah.
So that would be scary to me. Well, it is scary to me because I have it myself, so I'm overprotective with my kids. But to let other parents know, you know, there is, I started watching at a very early age and checking. Now, things are different now than they were like when you were growing up, but there's all this social media that these kids can
Right.
be on, and it's so easy for them to find the things to get involved with the wrong people. And I think parents have to not be afraid to step in and
Mm-hmm.
say, you know what, those kids you're hanging out with are just not good for you. And your child may be pissed off at you, but that's part of being a parent.
Yeah.
We're not there to be their best friends. We're there to help hopefully raise them in a good way, in a positive way, in a healthy way.
Right.
And once they become adults, you can be a parent and a friend. But as growing up, we really do need to keep in that parent role.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean you don't play with them and all that kind of stuff. But you really got to continually be aware. And that's not just from parents of addiction, that's all parents, because it doesn't have to be hereditary.
Right.
It can start by them just hanging out with the wrong people and getting involved with them. And there it goes, just like what happened with you. So,
Yeah. And it's almost
anyway.
like a switch in the brain. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I put this substance into my body and a switch turns on where it's like, this is it. Feels good, So definitely, like you said, being present and being in your children's business is a
Yeah,
good thing.
it is. And they'll thank you later. Maybe not at
Yeah,
the time. They'll probably be mad at you all the time,
that's
but
okay.
that's okay. Right.
Yeah.
So I do want to I've got a drug and alcohol addiction hotline that anybody can call at any time from anywhere. I'll go ahead and put it in our link too, but I just want to say out loud the number. It's 866 235 4572. Now, this is actually from the Recovery Village, but you can contact them from anywhere in the United States and they will help you. There will be somebody to talk to 24/7. And then, whatever area you're in, now this is the United States, but any area that you're in the United States, they will find a place for you. So,
That's
it,
great. Thank you so much.
yeah. Listen, I really appreciate your story, and I hope that people will really get something out of this and see that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, there really
Um,
is.
and it's
Yeah.
not easy. It's not going
Yep.
to be easy, but it's worth it.
Yep.
Do you agree?
I do. I do. I couldn't imagine, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, what my life would be like today. It is beautiful. And I'm
But
so, I have I work a program of recovery and I have a higher power in my life. And so I'm not making decisions on my own anymore. I get to do it with
that's
other
great.
women. I have a lot of support. And so help is out there.
And
Help
your
is out. You
husband
don't,
too, right?
oh yeah. Yeah.
So, and
You don't have to
we didn't
suffer anymore.
so we didn't go into this. Kim and I discussed this before, but her husband was a big part of her final decision that this is going to stop because he didn't give her a choice. he said, I'm done
Yeah.
if you don't get the help. So I'm going to give him credit for some of it, but as you guys should know, it's still her final decision. She could say, F you know,
Mm-hmm.
and walk right out of his life. But she chose to get help. So
Yeah. And so I think the
I
major
congratulate you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I think the major thing there is he stopped enabling me. He wasn't going to give me a place to live. He wasn't going to give me any money. He wasn't going to pay for my cell phone bill. So I think that really has a lot to do with it. Because when an addict or an alcoholic has no more resources, they are left alone. They don't have a place to stay. They don't have a car. They don't have food. They don't have, and at that point, then it's like, oh my gosh, all my resources are done. I need to go get help. And so if you are enabling anybody in any sort of way, maybe check in with yourself and be like, am I enabling this behavior? Am I giving money for a cell phone or am I giving them a place to live when they're in active addiction? So that
Right.
really, really helps too.
And I just want to add to that. So if you're a parent or a friend or or a spouse and you don't know what to do, you've tried this, it's not working, whatever, it's hard on you too. So I encourage you to help yourself. That you can go to AA yourself, and they'll give you a program to go through, as and also just any type of life coach or a counselor that can help you through, because it's really hard to sit back and watch too, even making that tough love decision, and having to live with that you've disconnected yourself from a loved one
Yeah.
because you want to help them. But that doesn't make it easier, just knowing that, oh, I got to do this. So, don't go through that alone either. You need to
Mhm.
find somebody that can support you with that and help you not give in. So I just wanted to put that out there too.
That's awesome. Perfect.
Okay. Well, listen, I so much appreciate you being on here. Is there anything else that you want to add to help anybody?
Um, well, thank you for letting me do this and share a message of hope. And don't give up. If you slip and you fall and you try to get clean or sober and relapse, that might be a part of your story. But you are always wanted and you're needed. So there's lots of people who will help. Just got to reach out and reach up our hand and say, I need help. So, yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you, Christy.
Okay. Thank you so much. And you have a wonderful day, and push this out there and let people know. So when we get done and I push it out there, I will give you notice and you can share it, and ask people to share.
Oh, will
So
do.
we
Thanks
can,
again.
you're welcome. Have a great day.
All right. Bye.